He always made that turn at the intersection, out of habit, even though he knew the road was old, narrow, a detour. But that day, someone was standing there, and everything changed. The turn without a sign. Every morning began the same. The glow from an old street lamp slid across the dashboard of his car as he pulled out of the lot. Early, before the city woke, before traffic lights, before horns, before voices. Every morning was the same, sometimes too much so. John started to notice it, not with his eyes, but his body. More and more, he felt the urge to turn off somewhere, but had no excuse to do so. John had been a delivery driver for nearly 18 years. Office buildings, hospitals, homes. He knew the addresses as well as the numbers on his keypad. His sedan, with peeling paint and a faded private courier decal, served him faithfully like an old pair of shoes. Not pretty, but his. Yesterday's tea sloshed in the thermos. He brought it anyway. John didn't like to throw things away, neither food nor days. He always chose his route from memory, avoiding the highway, through the industrial zone where the asphalt was cracked, past a rusted stop sign. There was an old turn, a looped street with no sign, where no one ever stood. Until one morning he noticed movement, a person by the roadside. Not a raised hand, not a thumb, just presence. In a blue-gray jacket, with a backpack and something that looked like a box wrapped in fabric. Usually John didn't stop. Drivers don't stop. It wasn't in the route. No protocol, no compensation. But his hand nudged the turn signal. He didn't know why he flicked it on. Maybe he just wanted for once to go off script. The turn was sharp. The street lamp's glow was left behind, and the car slipped into the semi-darkness of a street John had always considered useless. And now he was heading there on purpose. He didn't yet know that in 45 minutes, that turn would become the most important one of the morning. And not just for him. The road after the turn wound between warehouse hangars and concrete barriers, like a forgotten street stripped of all reference points. John drove slowly. His headlights caught fragments of graffiti, garbage bins, slanted signs. The passenger, if he could be called that, sat silently. A man in his mid-20s, with a tired face and a gaze that didn't linger on anything. On his knees he held a neatly wrapped box, 2 layers of gray cloth tied with plain laundry twine. John didn't ask where to go. Not at first. He didn't want to sound like a cab driver, didn't want to seem pushy. He just waited for the man to speak. "Can you take me to Storozhevaya near the flyover?" the guy finally asked. His voice was steady, almost apologetic. "It's empty there," John said, eyes on the road. "No houses, no stations." "I know." Silence returned, broken only by the muffled hum of the engine. The streetlights didn't work here. The whole scene felt like an unfinished set. Just the car, 2 people, and a box. "Is it a delivery?" John asked at last. The man nodded. "Not a drop-off. More like a return." He didn't explain to whom or from where, and John didn't press. He glanced sideways. The box looked solid but light. No labels, no address, no markings. Just one detail. The handle was tied with thread, like it had been made by a child's hand. On one of the streets, they stopped at an intersection. The traffic light blinked yellow, though there were no cars ahead or behind. John glanced at the mirror, then at his right hand, resting on the gear lever. The same hand that had flicked the turn signal earlier, almost on its own. He frowned, but didn't say what he was remembering. "Why were you standing right there?" he asked after a pause. The guy shrugged. "I figured, if someone decides to turn, it means the time has come." It sounded odd, not like a plea for help, but like a test, as if he'd been waiting for someone who'd break their route, for no reason, with no explanation. The light blinked again and went out. John shifted into gear and drove on. The box sat between them like a third passenger, unlabeled but not empty. He didn't know yet that it would turn out to be the key, not to a mystery, but to a decision. The junction at Storozhevaya didn't appear on any GPS as a final stop. It was a logistics hub, a place where roads branched off in all directions, but no one stayed. Beneath the overpass, the wind slept. Above it, the distant roar of the highway echoed. Everything here was temporary. The stops, the routes, the decisions. The car came to a halt by the shoulder. The man stepped out first, carefully holding the box in both hands, as if afraid the knot might come undone from the shaking. John turned off the engine but didn't rush to cut the headlights. The beam lay across gray concrete columns, tire marks, and scraps of paper bags blown in by the wind. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked as he got out. The man lowered his gaze. "Not exactly. I came to return something." John didn't ask for details. He already sensed this wasn't about logistics. Beneath the flyover stood a bench, wobbly, with peeling paint. The kind installed temporarily during construction and then forgotten. The man placed the box on the bench and straightened up. For a moment, he just stood there, looking at it, as if something inside might speak. "It's for my sister," he finally said. "Here." John looked around. No houses, no stops, just roads stretching into the distance and the wind whistling through the girders. "We always met here. Every time things fell apart, we came here." She used to joke, "Junctions are handy. If someone gets lost, they'll end up here eventually." He fell silent, then pulled something small from his pocket, a folded note. He tucked it under the twine, on top of the cloth. "She's not coming back," he said softly, "but maybe someone else will find it. Someone who needs it." John stood quietly. He didn't know what was inside the box. He didn't ask, and he didn't offer to take it back. He just nodded. The man took a step back, left it, and they returned to the car in silence. The headlights no longer touched the box. It remained on the bench like an undelivered letter, or a reminder of meetings that don't happen by schedule, but by a quiet feeling inside that it's time to leave something behind so someone else can find it. On the way back, John didn't turn on the radio. The road stretched out wordlessly, as if the morning still hadn't fully woken, and the city wasn't in a hurry to remind him about schedules, deadlines, forms, or stamps. He dropped the man off at a metro station. "No, thank you. No, keep in touch." Just a short nod, and the man, now empty-handed, disappeared into the crowd. John watched him go, and for the first time in a while felt a warm, quiet stirring in his chest, as if he hadn't just driven someone, but had ended up exactly where he was meant to be. He didn't go straight to his next delivery. Instead, he turned back, onto that same street he'd always avoided, the one with no signposts, and again he found himself at the junction. His headlights swept over the bench. The box was still there, untouched. No signs of interference, no markings, no graffiti, no dirt, as if the place itself was guarding it. John turned off the engine, stepped out. He didn't touch the box, just sat down beside it, on the very edge of the bench. Not opposite, next to it. The way you sit beside someone who is silent but wants to be heard. From a distance came the hum of trucks on the flyover, the faint hiss of tires. No one approached, no one looked. A teenager passed by with headphones on, not glancing at the box or the man. Then, a woman with a shopping cart. She paused for a second, looked closely, then moved on. Only the third person stopped. A girl, maybe 11, thin with a backpack. Her gaze, not that of a child. She approached, quietly, cautiously. "Whose is it?" she asked, not looking at John. "I don't know," he said, "but someone left it. For those who are searching." She stood there a while, then touched the twine. Didn't untie it, just ran her finger across it, as if testing whether it might fall apart. Then, she sat down beside him, in silence. John didn't know how long they sat there, but he understood. Returning now didn't mean going back to where work awaited. It meant returning to what was left unfinished. And from that morning on, the bench was no longer empty. Not every day, but often enough that it meant more than coincidence. On the third morning, John found himself at the junction again, not on assignment, not for work, just because something inside told him someone might be waiting. The box was still on the bench, but now tucked beneath the twine, a corner of paper poked out. A new one. John didn't touch it right away. He squinted, stepped closer. It was a note, a small piece of squared paper, torn from a school notebook. The handwriting was hesitant, as if the writer wasn't sure they were allowed to say it. I don't know who this is for, but I took not the box, but what was inside. An answer. Thank you to the one who left it. It changed everything. No signature, no name, no date, just a faint crease down the middle, like letters kept close to the heart. John read it without moving. His eyes lingered on the word changed. He didn't know what had been inside the box. He didn't know what the girl, the one with the backpack, had found. Maybe a photo, maybe a letter, maybe just someone else's honesty. He sat on the bench, beside it, like before, then placed the note back under the twine, carefully, almost ceremonially. Now the box was more than a box. It had become a point of connection between those searching and those who had once been lost. Later, just as he was about to leave, an old minivan pulled up. A woman in her 40s stepped out. After scanning the area, she approached the bench, paused at the note, touched the fabric. But she didn't take anything. She only closed her eyes as if feeling something warm. "Did you leave it?" she asked. "No," John replied. "I just keep coming back." She nodded, understanding, and walked away. That day was ordinary. John delivered a few packages, stopped by the warehouse, drank coffee from a plastic cup. But somewhere deep inside, a new thought had taken root. He looked at the note, then the bench, and for some reason he thought it had reached where it was meant to. By evening, he knew it was time to stop being just a witness. On the fifth day, John turned without thinking, as if the turn was no longer a deviation from the road, but part of it, not by map, by inner compass. Dawnlight had just begun to tint the concrete junction in warm amber. The car rolled to a quiet stop by the curb. John stepped out, as always, without expectations. He just wanted to be there, to be the one who returns. The box was gone. On the bench, only a note. New. The paper thinner, the lines straighter. Perhaps the same hand. Perhaps not. Now I know it's not shameful to search. Sometimes you don't find an answer. You find another person, and that's enough. Beside it lay an object, a tiny keychain in the shape of a compass. The needle pointed not north, but directly at a concrete column. John picked it up. The compass wasn't accurate. Plastic, childish, scratched. But that was the point. Not everything that shows direction has to be precise. He didn't know who had left it, didn't know who would find it next. But now he understood. He could leave something too. Not out of pity, not out of charity, but because at the right moment, someone might need it. He opened the glove compartment, pulled out his old notebook, the one where, for years, he had written addresses, door codes, building numbers. On the first blank page, he wrote, "If you found this place, then you're not alone. Sit, wait. Someone else might turn too." He tore out the page, folded it in half, pressed the keychain on top, and left them on the bench. Then he sat down beside them, not for long, just a few minutes, so his presence would linger. When he returned to the car and started the engine, he saw in the rearview mirror a figure, a teen in a hood, walking toward the bench. And at that moment, John understood. This place led nowhere. And yet, more and more often, this is exactly where people ended up, when they didn't know where else to turn. He didn't come every day now. Sometimes once a week, sometimes twice in a row. There were times when the bench stood empty, like a stage before a play begins. But something had changed in it, even when it seemed like nothing was happening. Sometimes he found a new note, sometimes an object. Once it was a coin with a hole in the middle. Another time an old bus ticket faded to 0641. No explanations, no names, just signs left by someone who also turned off course. He never took anything with him, only left things behind. At first, occasional notes. Then a rolled-up child's drawing found in his glove box. Sometimes just a warm blanket in a bag. He never signed anything. But one day someone had added a line under his note. I sat down and I waited. Weeks passed, then months. The weather changed, and with it, people. He saw those who came, read and left, then returned. Sometimes they sat beside him, in silence. Sometimes they just nodded, as if they knew. No need to speak. One day he saw an elderly man place a photograph on the bench. A family photo, old, yellowed, and beside it, a line. If you recognize someone, you know where to call. He didn't memorize numbers, didn't take photos, it didn't make a list. This wasn't about control, it was about trust. Now this had become a place where coincidence gave way to intention, where a turn without a sign became a meeting point. In the 6th month, on a rainy morning, John was driving by. On his regular route. He was late. The delivery was urgent. Still, he flicked the turn signal. He didn't stop, just drove past. Slowly, someone was sitting on the bench. A boy, alone. John saw he was holding something. A box, wrapped in fabric. And then he knew. Someone else had turned, and now it would all begin again, or continue. But without him, some benches don't need a name. Some routes don't belong on a map. But those who once found them returned, sometimes empty-handed, sometimes just to sit beside someone.